Deep beneath the shattered streets of Berlin, a man who had once commanded millions sat inside a concrete bunker, listening as explosions shook the walls above him. The empire he had promised would last 1,000 years had collapsed in barely 12. Outside, Soviet soldiers were only blocks away. Inside, trusted allies were disappearing. Commanders were delivering impossible news, and every passing hour brought the end closer. Yet even as defeat became undeniable, he refused to surrender. What happened during the final 48 hours inside that underground bunker remains one of history's most haunting stories. A tale of power, denial, loyalty, fear, and the final moments of one of history's most destructive dictators. By late April 1945, Berlin was no longer a capital city. It had become a battlefield. Entire neighborhoods lay in ruins after months of relentless bombing. Fires burned through collapsed buildings. Streets that had once echoed with traffic were now filled with rubble, abandoned vehicles, and desperate civilians searching for food and shelter. The sound of artillery never stopped. Every explosion meant the Soviet army was drawing closer. For ordinary Germans, survival had become the only goal. But nearly 16 meters below the surface, hidden beneath the Reich chancellery, another battle was unfolding. Not with rifles or tanks, but with fear, denial, and impossible decisions. The Führer bunker had become the last headquarters of Nazi Germany. The reinforced concrete walls protected those inside from bombs, but they could not keep out reality. Maps covered the walls. Telephones rang constantly. Messengers rushed through narrow corridors carrying reports that grew worse by the hour. Every update painted the same picture. German defenses were collapsing. Entire divisions no longer existed. Supply lines had been cut. The capital was surrounded. Still, Adolf Hitler insisted that victory was somehow possible. Only a few years earlier, Adolf Hitler stood at the height of his power. Much of Europe had fallen under Nazi control. His speeches filled massive stadiums. Millions believed Germany was unstoppable. Now those cheering crowds were gone. Most of his trusted generals had either been dismissed, blamed for failures, or no longer had armies left to command. The military briefings inside the bunker had changed dramatically. Instead of discussing future offensives, commanders debated which roads remained open and how long supplies could last. Each conversation ended with the same grim conclusion. Berlin could not be saved, yet Hitler refused to accept it. He continued issuing orders to military units that had already been destroyed or no longer existed. His staff understood the truth, but few dared challenge him directly. The atmosphere inside the bunker became increasingly tense. Every report risked provoking another outburst. Every silence revealed growing despair. As Soviet forces fought street by street toward the city center, life inside the bunker became increasingly isolated. Electricity flickered. Air circulation struggled. The constant vibration from artillery reminded everyone that the battle above was moving closer. Some officials quietly discussed escape routes. Others destroyed sensitive documents. Personal letters were burned. Secret files disappeared into flames. Many realized history was about to judge everything that had happened. Outside, thousands of soldiers continued fighting despite knowing the war was effectively lost. Some hoped for a miracle. Others simply obeyed orders until the very end. Inside the bunker, hope was becoming harder to find. During these last 48 hours, Hitler finally accepted one reality. Berlin would fall, but surrender was never an option he was willing to consider. He feared capture by the advancing Soviet army and believed it would become both a personal humiliation and a propaganda victory for his enemies. Rather than leave the bunker, he chose to remain. Those closest to him understood what that decision meant. The end was no longer a possibility. It had become inevitable. Even then, daily routines continued. Meetings were held, military updates arrived, meals were served. Yet beneath every conversation was the unspoken understanding that Nazi Germany had reached its final chapter. In one of history's most unexpected moments, Adolf Hitler married Eva Braun inside the bunker during the early hours of April 29, 1945. For years, she had remained largely outside public view, despite their long relationship. Now, as explosions echoed overhead and Berlin continued to collapse, the two exchanged vows in a brief civil ceremony. There was no celebration in the traditional sense. Only a small gathering witnessed the event. Soon afterward, Hitler dictated his political and personal testament. He blamed others for Germany's defeat, appointed successors, and recorded his final wishes. Outside, however, those decisions could no longer change the outcome. April 30th arrived. The Soviet army was now only a short distance away. The sound of combat had grown louder than ever. Inside the bunker, staff members quietly prepared for what many believed would happen. Shortly after midday, Hitler met with several members of his inner circle to say farewell. Witnesses later described the atmosphere as subdued and tense. There were no speeches promising victory, only brief handshakes, quiet words, and final goodbyes. Later that afternoon, Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun withdrew into his private room. A short time later, those outside heard a single unmistakable sound. When aides entered, they found both dead. Following Hitler's instructions, their bodies were carried outside into the Reich Chancellery garden, where they were burned in an attempt to prevent them from being publicly displayed after the fall of Berlin. Hitler's death did not immediately end the fighting. Combat continued across Berlin, but the leadership that had directed Nazi Germany for years had effectively collapsed. Within days, German forces surrendered. The Second World War in Europe was over. The conflict had claimed tens of millions of lives, devastated entire nations, and reshaped the political map of the world. The bunker that once served as the center of Nazi power became a symbol, not of strength, but of isolation, denial, and collapse. The final 48 hours inside Hitler's bunker continue to fascinate historians, not because they represent triumph, but because they reveal how even immense power can unravel when leaders reject reality. The story is also a reminder of the catastrophic consequences of dictatorship, aggressive war, and extremist ideology. The suffering caused by Nazi Germany extended far beyond the bunker, affecting millions across Europe and beyond. Remembering these events helps explain not only how the war ended, but why its lessons remain important today. History remembers those final hours not as the fall of a single man, but as the collapse of a regime whose actions brought immense destruction and human suffering. What do you think? If you had been inside that bunker during those final 48 hours, what would have been going through your mind? Share your thoughts below. And if you'd like more fact-based stories from history's most pivotal moments, don't forget to subscribe.